Why do you think it is? Because we're all young here, right? And young people overwhelmingly went for Bernie Sanders. Why do you think that it is that older people didn't go for Bernie Sanders and instead they turned out for Hillary Clinton?
Because when you're old,
Jaded.
you lose your memory,
Yeah.
and then you
I can
forget.
answer that question.
Hold on.
I can answer that question. It's
When
a very
you're older,
simple answer.
Hold on. When you're older, you lose your memory, and you forget Benghazi. But everybody needs to remember Benghazi.
Actually, it's because they remember the Cold War and they have negative connotations with words like socialism. That's the core reason.
Was that really what swung Democratic primary voters?
That's what scared people like my grandmother.
Well, I know a lot of old socialists too. I mean, I'd say it's probably a
But not a majority of America.
I
It's
say
old
it's a
socialists.
majority. I know, but I think, the people of the Democrats who voted in the primary, the older ones, I mean, just the whole fact that, I bet on her in, 2013, 2014. I bet $100, and she's been the presumed Democratic nominee. And people who are really obsessed with the party and beating Republicans and all, like, the tribalist aspect of, party politics,
You think that's tribalism?
it's tribalistic, yeah. No, it gets tribalistic. Dude, you look at I showed you all those screenshots of, like, my Hillary bot gallery.
Yeah, Hillary versus
Dude,
Bernie.
you're telling me
but
tribalism has
you're-
nothing to do with that? Tribalism is like an element of human psychology,
Okay,
man, and it's
but were you
exploited by
talking
party
about Hillary
politics.
versus Bernie or Democrats that now want to unify against Trump? Which one of those were you saying is tribalistic?
Both to a degree.
Okay, I would disagree with the one on unifying against Trump. I think that has a lot more to do with values and ideas than some sense of tribalism.
But you got to admit there's an element of it, though. I'm not going to say it's predominantly that, but you can't deny that. Well, it's not like you'll admit it in other cases, but then it just vanishes.
It's human nature, so there's probably some
I don't wanna
element
say
in
the
there,
party
but this
system
isn't what's
itself.
driving people's decisions.
But
I mean,
the way our
people
state parties and
are
our
pretty
county
ideologically
parties
divided.
and our ran is kind of like on a tribal basis, and they support,
You know what? I think the reason,
Yeah.
I think you're sort of right. I think you're half right. Because look, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I talked to a lot more voters this election between this primary than any of you guys here. So a
you
lot of what
probably
I
have.
heard from the older people was, older Democrat primary voters was, he can't win. Same thing you told me last year. Or right before this primary. It wasn't last year. It was like February or something, right before the primary. Same thing. So basically, he can't win, and sometimes a lot of them, about half of them, would cite like socialists, like someone who claims to be socialist can't win, and like so it's not like they wouldn't vote for him. It's just that it was the perception that he couldn't
this
win.
perception. It is we are very psychological people, especially when it comes to politics, and the perception, and then the campaign did a lot to make him not seem to be the democratic socialist that he was. They tried to not use the word that much, but once it comes to a general election, a guy like Trump or even Ted Cruz or whoever was going to be, they want a socialist, communist, socialist. That's all you would have heard till November.
But
Socialism
at this point,
and
look,
communism,
dude,
you would have a commercial like the chick from China who won a Hillary delegate spot. She said in her speech, she was like, the reason why she supports Hillary over Bernie is because she sees socialism firsthand. And so
Bernie's vision is communist China.
I mean, but to her in her mind, she can only connect that word to what she experienced in China. So she's gonna run the other direction from that.
Same thing Ayn Rand did.
I mean, I will just go out here and say I do think it is a bit absurd that I guess Bernie uses the word socialism or democratic socialist, and that people get afraid of it because to me Bernie Sanders is essentially like a new dealer, right? And if being a new dealer means you're somehow socialist, then I think that is like
people called FDR socialist.
He was a socialist. He was.
Well,
the
there we
first,
go. Bridgemon's calling him socialist.
He was.
FDR didn't call himself a socialist, and his supporters didn't call him that. In the same way that Obama didn't call himself a socialist.
But here's also
it was
the thing,
used as an attack.
If we're going to talk about Bernie Sanders and call him a democratic socialist, you have to consider FDR in that same light.
So, well, then let me
fair,
say
but
this
it's-
then, because and this is a part of what I had struggled with on Bernie Sanders, at least in the beginning. He comes from a movement that is a relatively international movement that has a mainstream political component, especially in Europe. And and democratic socialism used to mean not what's going on in Russia, but it used to mean a lot of other things like single-handed nuclear disarmament, like regulating labor markets in a way that was really inefficient and really failed and had to be reformed in several countries. They used to support a lot of things that did not work, and then over time they've let go of these things. Even right now in the Socialist Party in France, their socialist president and their socialist prime minister are working together to try and reform old labor laws that were passed by the socialist governments in the 80s. So the socialist movement on the worldwide stage has moderated and increasingly come closer to the liberals, to the point that they might as well stop calling themselves, in my view, they might as well stop calling themselves socialists, because they've essentially just moderated towards liberalism.
Bernie Sanders has done the Democratic Party versus.
But
Okay.
Bernie Sanders has done the same thing. He's changed a lot of his views over time as the international mainstream movement has changed their views, and now he's acting like, international, socialism, democratic socialism is just like what FDR did, and it's just like what liberalism has always been, and that's interesting to me. I'll just say that it's very interesting, and it makes me wonder what the label of socialism or the idea of socialism, will that have a future in the United States? Is there a reason for that to have a future?
Can I ask you a question? If the
Yeah.
New Deal if took place in Europe, would it not have been considered a socialist program?
Maybe it would have been considered socialists could have supported it, liberals could have supported it. You can have an idea that's supported by people of multiple philosophies and it not be exclusively owned by one of those
I
philosophies.
understand, but how is it not a socialist type? How is the New Deal era programs not?
I
No,
feel
I
like
think
I
you get
just
caught up-
answered that question,
Well,
but maybe an example would be
Dude, we're
that
just
the
getting caught
Democratic.
up on all this like ideological semantics. Why are we doing this?
Because I think
I really want
it's
to
an
know.
important point.
I really want to know.
But I think at the end of the day, a lot of it's just opinion. I mean, there's flexibility in all these terms. You know, it happens in history. These things.
But that's the thing. There's
and
no.
you can get
As a political scientist, and when I went to college, there was a correct answer for these terms. There wasn't no
Well,
gray
then
area.
what's the answer
You know
then?
what I mean?
Here, I will.
Okay.
I will recite the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition. There
this
is
won't help much.
a dictionary.
I know. Let's hear it.
Right?
Yes.
A
Dude, lay
way
it on
of
us.
organizing a society in which major industries are owned and controlled by the government rather than by individual people and companies.
See, that's communism. That is not
That's-
socialism.
No.
that is a wrong
that-
definition.
No, that is the dictionary definition
What
from
definition?
Is
Merriam-Webster.
that just socialism
That's
or is that
fine.
democratic socialism?
It's
That's
democratic
socialism.
Yeah, that's just socialism.
Oh, just
That's
socialism. That's the
yeah.
issue. This is
That
democratic
sounds right.
socialism.
Yeah, dude. Come on, man. Focus.
But even then, it's like the movement of democratic socialism.
That's a
Even
full
if you found a
definition. That's
definition,
more-
it's
what's this
evolved
full
so
definition?
much. So
I think
that,
we just need to admit that it's like a spectrum. We're on a spectrum between socialism and capitalism, and those are basically two ways to look
No
at it.
private
And
property.
That
we
is
need
not
more socialism.
That's
Yeah,
not
and that's-
socialism. That's
No,
that's.
I'm not
I'll
saying
just,
we need
I'll just say that
absolute
for me,
socialism,
it's a
but-
frustrating element of the conversation because we don't need, like, when you say we need more socialism, I say no, and then you say, well, don't you want to regulate the banks or don't you want to do these things? I say, well, yeah, but I want to do that as a liberal, not as a socialist. Socialism, I think, still holds certain values and views that are still opposed to liberalism, even though they've largely undressed themselves of their other bad ideas. There's still some differences.
Like what?
Like socialists usually want to have a single payer system, liberals usually want to have a universal market-based system.
And,
So you're
and
saying
in America, there's
So you're saying Hillary Clinton's a socialist?
Okay, let me say something right now. We are never going to have universal health care in this country. You guys agree with me?
No,
I don't
I
believe
disagree.
that. I disagree with that.
See, this is where I think we break, dude. You guys are really optimistic, and like I would like to an unrealistic degree. I don't like. So you think?
But
Do you think?
who
Do you
is
think
it who-
Obamacare helps significantly towards universal health care, not health insurance, health care?
It's a seed. It's planted.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
does.
seed.
It does all the difficult things that
Yes.
you need. Now all you have to do is increase
Except lower the
funding.
price of health care.
But
Right,
like I said,
actual
it's a
cost.
seed. It's
But
a
the thing.
starting
Like,
plot.
We now have the capacity to do that. All we need to
aren't
do
premiums
is
rising,
get.
though? I mean-
as long as we have majorities in both houses of Congress, we can actually we can control the spending process and
And
bring
what
down
are the
healthcare
odds
prices.
that we'll actually have as
And
Democrats?
see, here we come full circle
Both
back to
houses.
why
It'll
we
be
need
difficult
Bernie.
because of how it's been gerrymandered.
This is
right
why
now.
you
Exactly.
need a candidate who inspires people.
But if you're gonna
because
ask
you
it, it's gonna
inspire
happen.
people, they come out and they vote, and you can inspire them to come out and vote in the midterms. And you can't do this with a candidate who's
Sure, I won't disagree with that point. I think that Bernie Sanders would have been a candidate that would have inspired a lot of people to come out. I don't know if he would have inspired other people to vote against Democrats, but
if you look at
I think he would have inspired a good number of people.
But
think
I mean,
you're right.
still, if you look at, you can say he lost the primary, and even if you think it's over, if you look at the polls, he still does better against Trump than Hillary.
Yeah.
He's,
I mean, we also didn't know Trump was going to be the nominee either.
Well,
A lot of people suspected it. A
We
lot of
didn't know.
people.
I mean, people.
I talked to Bernie supporters.
we
And
talked
there were a
about
lot of
this-
elements in this election where I'm saying.
when we
you know,
talked about this on the show, the prediction markets had Trump as the likely nominee.
Yeah,
that was really everyone
that
was in
like
denial.
in April, wasn't it?
Everyone was in denial. Everyone in the establishment, everyone with you guys type of you were in total denial of like the reality of it.
Were we in total denial?
I think so.
I mean, it came clear.
Well, maybe
I
not
don't
you
remember
guys.
that.
When
Maybe not
Rubio
you
lost
guys.
Florida, that's when I was like,
I was
okay,
still
so-
a little bit in denial, but I was like, there's no way he's not gonna win at this
I
point.
mean, I really thought I thought Ted Cruz was going to be the guy.
But I even talked to like
I really did.
I remember I was.
But did you
phone-banking-
think there was no way Trump could win, or you just
Look,
thought Cruz had the
I
advantage?
thought that Republican voters were responsible enough not to allow this to happen.
Ha.
I really
Me
did.
too, me
I
too,
really
yeah.
did.
Let me-
I was like,
I was
okay,
right there with
I
you,
think
man.
people were going to be like, okay, we need to stop this shit. We need to
Let me point out one other fact.
really can win.
Yeah,
one
man.
other factor, to ameliorate Bernie's loss is, I was talking to a lot of people did this in Ohio, but I talked to a couple people phone banking there, in just like one day that Democrats, since it was open primary, Democrats were going to vote for Kasich because he was the governor. So a lot of Bernie supporters that I talked to who would have otherwise voted for Bernie voted for Kasich because they could vote against Trump.
And we to assume that Hillary Clinton supporters didn't do the same thing?
I know, I don't know, but I talked to a good amount of Bernie ones who did. So
Why was
I don't
that?
know.
Maybe you were working on the Bernie campaign
Yeah,
instead
but we
of
were
the
calling
Hillary campaign?
only registered Democrats. It's not like we only had Bernie people's phone numbers. We had all Democrats.
So would
and
you
they were
agree
supposed to be
that-
Democrats, but there was really everybody.
Would you agree that doesn't sound like a very good reason then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying it's a factor. It's something to think about.
Okay,
It's
sure.
I'm saying there were a lot of factors in this election that you're acting like. I'm saying this came real close for all the fuckery in this election. All the shit that went out. Like, look, if we had, pretty open primaries, or at least ones where you didn't have to register 6 months in advance with the party and stuff like that, and where there were no. And
yeah.
look,
Okay, so where
so-
do you have to register 6 months in advance?
New York.
Yeah, the New York State. Is that?
You have to register as the party
is
6
that the
months ahead of
Democratic
time.
Party's fault? Is that the Secretary of State's fault in New York?
I'm not. That's not what we're talking about though, because at this point, the superdelegates are deciding this election, and the superdelegates are going to go to the convention, and they're going to prove whether they're here to fight for the
So I wanna
establishment
bring
or
up
they're
the
here.